Hello there, I'm Jamie. Welcome to another session of Vista Export Service. In this final session, we'll go through the amazing process of turning a raw render into a stunning final image. So the first thing that we're going to do is to load up the pre-rendered files in Photoshop. To do so, we're going to start by clicking on the File tab, choose the Scripts option from the list, and load the files into Stack. In the Load Layers dialog, click on the Browse toggle. In the Renders folder, select the first render element and scroll down. Hold down the Shift key and select the last render element to select the entire set of renders, and press OK. The entire set should load up. Click OK to load them up. All the pre-rendered files should start loading up automatically in the stack. Now that all the pre-rendered files are loaded in the stack, we're going to first isolate the main RGB render element. By extending the dialog to the left, you'll be able to quickly read which render element is which. This is the RGB render element. To isolate the layer, simply hold down the Alt key and click on the eye icon. So here's your RGB layer. So the next thing that we're going to do is to select it and move it to the bottom of the pole. Like so. Because this is one of the main layers, we're going to color code it by simply right clicking on the layer and choosing the red color from the list. The next step is to start breaking down the render elements into separate groups. So to create the first group, you're just going to click on the group icon there to create the first group. We're going to rename this group as equal multimap equal. We are adding equal before and after the name because it will be easier to right click on the document and select a specific layer inside a group. It will make better sense at a later stage. This group will be used to move all the multimap layers and the V-Ray wire color. Select the first element there, scroll down, hold down the Shift key and select the last multimap layer. Also, select and move the wire color layer. The next group that we're going to create is the Light Select group. This is the group where all the V-Ray Light Select elements will be moved into. Let's call it Equal Light Select Equal. Select the first Light Select layer, scroll down, hold the Shift key and select the last one. Move all the selected layers into the new Light Select group. The next folder that we're going to create is just a folder called Render Elements. Let's name the new folder as Equal Render Element Equal. This is the folder where all the remaining render elements will be moved into, apart from the main RGB render. Next to that, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it Adjustments. So this is where we're going to add all the adjustment layers and so on. So the Light Select should always be under the adjustments, and all these other groups should be on top. The reason why a multi-map group should always be on top of all the other layers is because it's easy to select. I'm just going to move that outside. So the first thing that we're going to do is to add curves to the adjustment group. Click on the Adjustment Layers button and select the curves from the list. Create the first point there, one on top, another one on bottom there. This top area here are the bright parts of the image. This area here, where you see the graph, are the darker areas of the image. So you could just add a bit of contrast like so. Before we tweak any further with the image, let's bring in the same photo reference used before. As mentioned earlier, photo references are quite useful to provide a sense of direction. To make the image more dramatic, let's start by replacing the sky with a more striking background image. To replace the sky, we're going to start by creating a group called background. We're going to go to render elements there, select the alpha element, as you can see, hold on the control key, go to the channels tab and click on the RGB. You can see the selection there, and go select the background group there. While the selection is still on, click on the mask button to create the group mask. Actually, let's just invert there, Control Z to go back. While the selection is still on, click on the select tab and choose the invert selection. So what's black is what's not going to be seen, and what's white is where the background is going to go. The next step is to find some really striking background images. Simply Google CG textures. As mentioned earlier, cgtextures.com is one of the best websites in the world to find seamless textures, skies, HDRI and so on. As previously done, simply type in the materials that you're looking for. We could obviously turn a daylight sky into a night one, but it's always best to use a sky that matches the time of the day we are trying to achieve. And the one that we're going to pick is this one here. So this is a very striking sky, quite dusky, blue, dark. From here you can just choose any particular size here. We can go to 8000 or 5000 pixels. You just click there and then it'll be downloaded. So once you've downloaded the sky, you simply bring it in. So what we're going to do is just to select the layer there, duplicate it, and then choose the destination. Choose the entitled document. It's called entitle 1. The sky is actually there. Let's go to the render elements there and deselect the house outside layer. Next thing that we're going to do is just move the sky accordingly. So this is just a starting point. Let's say this document has house outside night.pst. So one of the amazing things about using a group in order to place the sky is that you can move the sky in any direction you like, and it's still going to be contained within the mask that we've just created there. And be careful not to select the mask. Every time you want to move the sky, just select the layer itself and rename it as sky. Also, let's add an hyphen before and after the word background. So for the folders outside, we use the equal, but any subfolders or subgroups, we just use an hyphen. For instance, if you go, they see adjustments, we know because that has an equal in front, that is a group there, and this is a subgroup, and this is a layer, and so on. It's just easier to select. So if you want to select the sky, just right click and the sky is selected. It just makes it a lot easier to select layers by right clicking on the document itself. So the next step is to start adding the viewer light select elements. So the first one that we're going to be working with is the dome light viewer light select. So you're going to select and move the dome light all the way down. With viewer light select elements, the screen blending mode works best. As you can see, it makes a huge difference with the before and after, just by clicking on the eye icon there. A massive game changer. So the next step is to try and match the colors here. One of the quickest ways to match colors is to pay close attention to the white tones of the photo reference. The next step is to go to the adjustments group and desaturate the overall image with the hue and saturation adjustment layer. To make the image more appealing, we're going to add a bit of fog in the background. Before we create the fog, we're going to use the ZDef render element as the basis for the mask. Select the layer first, go to channels, hold on the control key, click on the RGB color there, go to the layers tab. While the selection is still on, let's create a new layer and inverse the selection, and let's add solid color there. We can pick this color here to start with. And the main reason why we've chosen the color fill adjustment layer is just because it's easy to control the color there. Let's reduce the opacity of the fog and use the background image for the color fill. So we've just used the eyedropper tool to pick the background color. So let's reduce further the fog opacity to about 30%. As you can see, just by adding a bit of fog, it made the whole image a lot more appealing. The next step is to start adding the other viewer lights like elements to make the overall image even more appealing. This light is making no difference to the scene, so we just start deleting. Just by turning the layer on and off, you can see the difference each light is making to the scene. For the viewer light select element, let's use the screen blending mode as seen before. We are also going to add the levels adjustment layer on top. To make the levels to affect only the layer below, we're going to clip it against it. Simply hold down the Alt key. When you see the clipping sign, simply click on it to clip it. This levels adjustment layer is only affecting the layer below now. So the first light is there. So what we're going to do is just to boost the color slightly. So you just move the outer point slightly to the left and the midpoint to the left as well. And we can also add a color, so that is just to boost up the light itself. So the next thing that we're going to do is to add color to it. So you're going to use another levels adjustment layer, and we're just going to call it colors. It's very useful to name the adjustment layers according to their functionality, as opposed to having every single adjustment layer named levels. So in here, we're just going to choose the red color first. Instead of red, just going to use a bit of yellow. If you go to yellow there, you can actually see how each color is affecting the scene. Add the layer mask. We can use the layer mask to brush out the areas that we don't need. When it comes to masks, the mask's thumbnail needs to be selected first. The white color background brings the pixels to the front, and the black color brushes them away. So obviously you don't want to be masking away at 100%. Reduce your opacity to 10, so that means you're gradually brushing away areas that you don't need. To switch between the black and white background colors, simply click on the X button on your keyboard. You can see them switching. First, increase the levels of the V-Ray Light Select element, and then you can brush away the areas that you don't require. You can see the light also affecting the reflections there. So we're going to do the same with the next lights. So you're going to select this light, square one, choose the blending mode to screen. The next thing that we're going to do is to copy the other two adjustment layers. Hold down the control key and click on both adjustment layers, and with Alt key just copy it down. So you copy it. As before, use the clipping mask to clip both adjustment layers to the V-Ray Light Select below. As you can see, both adjustment layers are only affecting the V-Ray Light Select element. Also, add a mask layer by clicking on its button. Enable the brush tool by clicking on its button or by pressing B on your keyboard. Also, reduce the brush opacity to about 10. This way you can gradually mask away the areas that you don't need without going too drastically. And you can repeat the same process with every single V-Ray Light Select element. After using the same techniques with every single V-Ray Light Select element in a scene, this is what the final result looked like. The following step is to start breaking down a scene into separate groups. We're going to start by selecting the car. To do so, we're going to start by opening the multi-matte group and selecting the multi-matte element with the car mask. As previously done, go to the Channels tab, hold down the Control key and click on the red channel. While the selection is on, go back to the Layers tab, scroll down and create a new group. Most groups created for objects in a scene should always be under the adjustments in the Light Select group. There are obviously exceptions when you might need to move them on top of the Light Select group when objects become too bright because of the V-Ray Light Select. While the selection is still on, create a group mask by clicking on its button. Scroll up and turn off the multi-matte layer. Let's name this new group as Car. The next step is to bring this car to life by adding key render elements such as reflections, specular, and so on. Let's start by opening the Render Elements group. Select the specular element, hold down the Alt key and move the layer down to the car group to copy it. The specular render works best with the screen blending mode. As mentioned earlier, these copied elements are only affecting the car because of the group mask. The next render element that we're going to copy is the V-Ray Raw Reflection. Place the new V-Ray Raw Reflection under the specular. It's just the order in which most shaders are built. So at the very base you've got the diffuse filter, and then you've got the reflections, the specular, and so on. The raw reflections work best with a normal blending mode. Also, reduce the opacity slightly in order to make it a bit more appealing. Let's duplicate the specular element to make it a bit more apparent, just by holding down the Alt key and moving it. Let's also copy and move the V-Ray reflection element. The V-Ray reflection element works best with the screen blending mode. And you can always add a little bit of levels on top. Currently, the taillights look a bit too dark. To correct this, we're going to use the previous daylight render element. Let's use the polygonal lasso tool to draw, copy and paste that area into our document. Simply draw and close each area when you see a small circle. To add other selections, simply hold down the Shift key and continue drawing other areas. Once you finish selecting the relevant areas, simply copy by going to the File and selecting Copy, and then paste it. Duplicate and choose our document as a destination to paste the layer into our document. You can see the taillights there. Select and move the taillight and rename it. Also, let's add the levels adjustment layer and clip it against the taillight. Let's tweak with the levels slightly. Because we'll be adding glow to the taillight, it's best if you move it into the adjustments group and create a new group and rename it as taillight. Duplicate the taillight layer and convert it into a smart object. Right click on the duplicated layer and choose to convert to a smart object. Smart objects allows you to scale down a layer without affecting the original quality. Also, it allows you to edit any filters applied to a layer. Let's apply the Gaussian blur and set the radius to about 11. Also, change the blending mode to screen to make it a bit more glowy. The next step is to add a bit of color to the overall image. Let's start with a bit of contrast first. Select the curves adjustment layer and tweak with its points. We're also adding the color balance adjustment layer to add some warmth to the image. Let's start by increasing the reds, the greens and the yellows slightly there. As you can see, the overall image is becoming more and more appealing to look at. Also, we're going to add the selective color adjustment layer. So we're going to tweak with the blue tones of the scene. We can also reduce the overall saturation slightly. The blue tones seem a bit saturated still. Let's pick the blue tones and desaturate them a bit further. The next step is to start working on the wood material of the building. Let's start by enabling the selection of the green multi-matte element for the wood. Create a new group, name it Wood, and create a new group mask. The next step is to select and move all the rich dirt render elements closer to the groups that we're currently working with. Copy and move the rich dirt building streaks layer into the wood folder. Rich dirt elements work best with a multiplier blending mode. Reduce the opacity slightly to make it less apparent. The next step is to start brushing away parts of the rich dirt layer that are not very complementary to the image. Add the layer mask and enable the brush tool. Reduce the brush opacity and start brushing away the undesired areas of the rich dirt. Let's go back to the color fill adjustment layer and change the fog color slightly. Let's tweak the rich dirt layer a bit further. The next step is to start adding some warm colors to the glass areas. As previously done, let's select the multi-matte color for the glass areas. Turn off the multi-matte layer, create a new group, name it Glass, and add the group mask. Let's create a levels adjustment layer inside the glass group. Increase the brightness by moving the slider a bit to the left. Use the brush tool to mask away areas that are a bit too bright. To make the glass areas a bit warmer and more appealing, Add the photo filter adjustment layer and increase the density to about 24. Select the levels adjustment layer and tweak it further. Back on the photo filter adjustment layer, clip it against the levels adjustment layer. Increase the density to about 81% to make the colors a bit warmer. Use some of the techniques covered earlier to make the glass areas a bit more appealing. To add a bit of spark to the lights inside the houses, we're going to bring in some glare effects. Simply open the file under the name of glarelayers.psd. Drag and drop the star copy layer into the main PSD document. Select and move it inside the window of the house next door. Close the glare document and convert the star layer into a smart object. While the Move tool is still selected, hold down the Alt key and copy a few of the glare layers across the windows. To select layers on a document, simply right-click on it. To randomize the glare, simply use the Transform tool to flip and rotate the layers. You can also press Ctrl and T from your keyboard to enable the Transform tool. Use some of the techniques covered earlier to brighten up the lamppost and add glare to the light. After all tweaks and adjustments, the final image should look something similar to this file. The final stage is to add a chromatic aberration. To do so, right-click on the edge of the document and choose to duplicate. Select any flattened layer, right-click and choose to flatten the image. The next step is to increase the document zoom to about 100% by typing it in. Go to the Channels tab, select the red channel, enable the Move tool and nudge it up once. Select the green channel next and nudge it down once. Select the blue channel and nudge it to the left once. Select the RGB channel to go back to the normal colors and check how the chromatic aberration is affecting the image. This is an artifact often seen in real photos but makes 3D renders a bit more realistic. Duplicate the chromatic aberration layer and choose the main PSD as the destination document. Name the new layer as Chromatic Aberration. Let's use the darken color blending mode to blend it with the image. We can also reduce the opacity to about 30% to make the chromatic aberration less apparent. Zoom in to see the huge difference it's making to the image. The next step is to save the document as a TIFF file. Click on the File tab and choose the Save As option. Choose a TIFF file format from the list, and check the layers and the alpha channels to flatten the image. TIFF file formats are the best formats for high-resolution prints. In TIFF Options dialog, make sure the Discard Layers and Save Copy is checked. You can also save the file as a JPEG if you intend to email it. Finally, you can save the PSD file for any future changes in a document. This concludes our post-production course of the exterior night scene. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did.